serve on this in this hearing, although I don't actually serve on the committee. I'd like to bring up the issue of ethylene oxide. Willowbrook, Illinois, in my district, is home to a sterilization facility that's used ethylene oxide for decades to sterilize medical equipment. And this community has unfortunately become an example of the important role that the EPA plays in defending public health and what can happen when these systems don't do as well as they should. In the case of ethylene oxide, there was roughly a 15-year gap between the publication of scientific papers that indicated ethylene oxide was a far more powerful carcinogen than had previously been assumed, and the corrective actions and eventual shutdown of that facility in my district that was venting apparently unsafe amounts of ethylene oxide into nearby neighborhoods. And to that end, I request unanimous consent to insert into the record the executive summary of the EPA's evaluation of the inhalation carcinogenicity of ethylene oxide into the record.
Without objection.
Thank you. And so, Dr. Orme Zavaleta.
Jennifer.
Jennifer. You know, what would the reasons have been for a 15-year delay in the scientific findings and the actual actions? You know, are these things limited by just a shortage of manpower? You've got tens of thousands of chemicals and you have to prioritize your effort and you just don't have enough people on this? Or is this a situation where there's a lot of pressure from industry that's delaying, causing a 15-year delay of this kind?
Yeah, so I'm not exactly clear on your thinking of the time frame. IRIS provided an assessment for ethylene oxide in 2016.
Correct, and all the references in that were scientific papers dating from the late 90s, early 2000s.
So, you know, I think that that's something that I can take back to staff and we can get further information on how additional information can be incorporated. But the assessment that was published in 2016 went through, it's a very complex chemical, a lot of intricacies in trying to evaluate
it's a
risk.
simple chemical, but with complex biological effects.
There you go. And so in going through the reviews, it went through 2 rounds of review with our scientific advisory board, which is not always common, but a very rigorous, thorough review, as well as review through the different federal agencies and within EPA. So it's a very solid assessment, and it's one that we continue to support. And that's part of our responsibility.
I understand. It just would have been nice if it would have been faster than 15 years. And I was just wondering if this is a, I guess the point of my question is if this is a manpower limited thing, then I think there is an argument to be made to just increase the manpower available so this situation doesn't happen. Because you can mess up either way. You know, there are people panic selling their houses, and if it turns out the best scientific indications are that is unnecessary, then, you know, mistakes have been made in that direction. And of course, there's the danger of damage to human health. And so if you could actually have a look at that specific case and see to what extent, if you were not manpower limited.
Yeah, we'll be glad to follow up.
Whether what that time scale could have been compressed to be.
Sure.
And also, if you could come up with a best estimate of the number of people, you know, who will, you know, assuming that the report stays valid, a best estimate of the number of people, additional cancer cases nationwide due to that delay, and particularly the avoidable part that might be avoided with more investment in manpower. And just more generally, does the EPA or any third party maintain estimates of the cumulative number of lives saved by EPA actions?
So I think that's something I'll also have to follow up. There are evaluations that are not necessarily conducted within ORD, but other parts of the agency that looks at impact analyses, and so that's something we can follow up.
Yeah, no, it would be a very good thing to do. Also, the cumulative costs, because what your actions impose costs on industry, and they save human lives. And seeing those two numbers side by side, both cumulatively and for specific actions, I think would clarify a lot of the thinking and certainly we tend to talk past each other where we're only looking at one side of it on this committee in the past.
Okay.
And that would allow you, of course, to look at the number of lives saved per dollar of cost, which is a very tough thing to talk about in politics, but really, you know, that's I think, one of the lenses that we have to look at this through. And particularly in cases where the actions are delayed because of manpower limitations, that might allow us to think about whether an investment here, to quantify whether an investment in increased manpower would save a roughly quantifiable number of human lives. So if you get back with those, and if it turns out that you don't have those estimates, come up with a scope of a congressional request to get those numbers reported. I think it would clarify our thinking greatly. And thank you. I see my time is up and yield back.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you.